Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to the hustle and bustle and the grind. And as everybody sails off in anxiety and stress off to their busy jobs, let's talk about why now 55 is the new 65 in terms of retirement. Yes, things have changed. And while the government and the rhetoric and the propaganda would like you to believe that we all live longer and that retirement age should be rising, I'm going to buck the trend. So listen to me for a second. You really need to understand this because I've been giving this a lot of thought. Let's take this from the top. So first of all, who funds Social Security? Who funds CPP? Who funds all of these pensions? Well, you do, but indirectly the government manages it for you, right? So if the government manages your money, if hypothetically, ask yourself this question. It doesn't matter what country, every country has something similar, or most countries do, but they all sort of manage it different. The ages and the qualifications are a little bit different, but the general concept is the same. The longer you wait, think about this. This has been bugging me now because the longer you wait to collect your pension, the less likely you'll either collect it or the less amount you will collect. And that's a win from the government's perspective, isn't it? They all want to keep that money in there. They want the cash flow. They want you putting in, but they don't want you taking out. I mean, it's all plus positive for them, net cash flow, right? So if you think about this, why would the government want to give you money? Since when have you ever been able to trust the government? And this isn't an anti-government, this is not the propaganda, this is just a reality. When has the government ever shown that they actually personally care? They don't. What they do care about is balancing books. Actually, in most cases, they don't even care about that, but they do like to see positive cash flow. So they want to see you keep working. So as you keep working and working, you're putting into the system, you're working longer. They keep planting the seed, propaganda seeds everywhere, dropping these little nuggets that people are living longer, people are living healthier, people can keep working longer. And I'm hearing these statistics. I shared this with you a while back on a great video that actually is my most successful video, I'll be quite honest. Why retiring at 65 is your biggest mistake. If you haven't seen it, you've got to take a look at it because I really dive into all the specific statistics, which I won't do today, but it really talks about all these different countries, and every country is a little bit different in terms of the average mortality rates, the average age where people get chronically ill. All of that varies, with North America being one of the worst, Canada, US, because of obesity, because of fast food, because of industrialization, because of just sitting around a lot more than a lot of other countries. And so what generally happens is people tend to be sicker sooner in places like North America, US, Canada, for example. They generally don't fare as well. They don't live as long on average, and they certainly don't stay healthy as long as, places like Korea and Japan and some of those other countries. What I've seen on the statistics there, we're generally better off, fared fairly well. So if you continue to work, think about this. You continue to work, you're feeding into the system, you're feeding the process, and that's fine. It's good to feel to be a productive member of society. But I've also had a comment here, a gentleman that reached out to me here that mentioned, I like feeling productive. I never want to rely on Social Security. I don't know what's going on. I just want to keep going. I don't want to have that stress and worry about where the money's coming from. And that's a real concern. And I think people are defaulting to that. And that is such a valid concern because people are often taxed to the hilt. Cost of living is taking people by the shirt collar and taking everything they got. So here's a scenario. I mean, the governments here are clearly taking away. So the reason I say this 55 is the new 65 is for a variety of reasons. We're trending in a bad direction. Okay, so other than the propaganda machine that is the government, think about what we're talking about here, okay? Are we living longer? Not by much. I mean, if you trend over the last 25 years, yes, we're trending longer. The average life expectancy has risen over about 6 or 7 years in a 25-year span. Of course, the average age as well before people get chronically ill now is 66.1 years of age, and it was earlier before. So we are slowly trending upwards, but you've got to consider one other aspect here. Things are flipping. They're starting to say now this generation, like our generation and beyond, are likely going to go the other way, where we saw this natural progression in life expectancy, and they say this may in fact be the generation where it starts to decline again. A lot of that, again, because of industrialization, because of fast food, because of all those factors. But there's one other factor that I'm going to throw in here, and this is why 55 is the new 65. Stress. You think about, okay, back in the day, my parents, your parents, most of our parents, or some of you who are of that age can probably relate. Jobs 50 years ago, while physically more demanding in most cases, there was more, dirt under the fingernails, so to speak. I know my parents grew up in that environment. I kind of started my career in places like that as well. So often what you're finding is those types of jobs 50 years ago were more physical. So they were harder on the body, and, you get the aches and pains, and, the wounded knees and the shoulders and the arms. And that can be a life of misery in old age, absolutely dealing with that. But there's another factor now, and I like to consider it burnout and stress. People in those eras were physically tired. And I had jobs where I was working in substations, hauling around 4-aught ground chains, and at the end of the day, walking around and washed rock, you were tired, you were exhausted. But you felt good the next morning after a good night's sleep, and it was physically good work for you. But the anxiety, this stressor, that chronic stress of reports that have to be done by the end of the week to the next week, meetings, I got to meet this, I got to meet that, all these deadlines and meetings and reports that have to be done were never a thing that you had to contend with back 50 years ago, or very few people did. It wasn't the norm, let's put it that way. Today, the corporate world drives that to be more of the norm. And so this high energy, high pace, people can't get information fast enough. IT, they talk about the communication age, where you just can't, even at the swipe of a finger or the stroke of a key on the keyboard, you still can't get that information fast enough. When we grew up, and I think back 30 years, 40 years ago, when I was a kid, you walked down to your friend's place, or you rode your bike, or you called them on your rotary phone, but there wasn't this emergent feeling and need to have that information or that communication like now. That life was slower. It was a simpler time. Was it better? In many ways, it was. So what we have now is a situation where people are burning out, okay? So back in the day, maybe you could retire at 65. But now with these high stress, high anxiety jobs, these jobs with mass deliverables, you actually have you're in a position now where you're burning yourself out. Often people are burning themselves at both ends of the candle, and you're toast, you're worn out emotionally, psychologically. Why do you think people are going off the deep end, proverbially speaking? It's because just the stressors and expectations and social everything in where we're at today in this world is driving people in different directions, pulling you from 20 different directions, and people are stressing out. Life is really challenging these days in other ways, not so much the physical way like we did 50 years ago, but in another way. But here's another one. So you think about this. I think about the ticking time bomb effect, okay? Because this is really what our careers are becoming. Now, I'm not saying hurry up and go retire today. I'm saying as soon as you possibly can, talking to a financial advisor, figure out what works for you and whether it's sustainable. Like, that is always the bottom line. The last thing I want to do is suggest that somebody go out there and make a knee-jerk response and do something irresponsible. But run the numbers, look at it, or at least start formulating that plan. Start looking at it. Well, I have X amount on my account. I've got this bit of pension. If I sell the house or downsize, or if I sell this car, we could probably do it. So, and it's not to just hurry up and sit at home and wait. It's to move on to another phase where you can enjoy your life. Like, I am not sitting around. Have you, if as you notice, this is my walk. I like to share this with you, and I'm going to share more information on my personal life and how I spend my days. But quite frankly, there's a ticking time bomb. And reason I say that, we are trending in the wrong way. Okay, life expectancy, I think, is plateaued. I don't think we're going to continue going up. At least not in North America. I don't see anything drastic changing there. But they want to continue extending the Social Security. They're already saying in 10 years from now that they're going to claw that back, scale it back, and likely your benefits will be reduced. So that's bad, right? I think. I mean, most people are relying on that. Here's another one. Governments. And I don't want to get too political. However, there's no secret. It's a shocker. No shocker in the news. And we're seeing it in the US. We're seeing it in Canada. We're seeing it in a lot of countries. I've seen it in the UK. Whew. A lot of people are having a hard time right now. I'm telling you. Here's one for you, okay? Politically. And it all looks in different formats. And it's all a little bit different language. But it's ultimately the same response by governments to clean out your bank accounts. Now, again, not a political play, but you have to be prepared for what's coming down the chute. And so what I'm realizing is now, what we're seeing is with the governments, they're all doing something. The US, depends on the level of government that rolls into power, is already talking about heavy capital gains, unrealized capital gains. Your house is you've made $400,000 on your house in 20 years. You know what? You owe us 50% of the unrealized. You don't even have to sell the house. And all of a sudden they want that tax bill. Could you imagine trying to come up with that, write a tax or a check for that amount? That's what they're proposing. And then on the other side, okay, that's one end. So think about, you've got investments, 401 or whatever, 401k, and you've got some of these big investments, and you're already thinking about, okay, you're sailing in on that big day. You want to retire, okay? So you've got the 401k thing going on. You think, okay, I've got $750,000. All right, perfect. We can do with this retirement thing. Think again. Because with certain governments already in action, they're already talking about taxing those people and taxing everything, or allegedly, that's the word now. It hasn't been carved out in hard legislation, so it's not all facts. But there's lots of talk already. Could you imagine? You go into thinking, hey, I'm retiring in a year and a half. I've got $750,000. The wrong government gets into position, and that's anywhere, because trust me, this is happening across the globe in multiple different countries. And all of a sudden, they hit you with either an unrealized capital gains, they're hitting you with a tax bill on those types of profits, those types of savings, those types of investments. Next thing you know, that $750,000 becomes $375,000. Now are you retiring? Now how much longer do you need to continue on? Now you look at down the barrel of a year and a half out, and all of a sudden they hit you, a year out from now, everything switches up, new laws go into place, bang. All of a sudden you've got to write this big tax bill. You can't cash out. Now you've got to work another 10 or 15 years, or pretty much never. So it's a sad, sad state. We're seeing this, of course, I know in Canada, we're seeing this as well with capital gains on second, third residence. Even they're planting the seed, and I like to use the word small end of the wedge. Okay, some people say, well, it's the 2%, top 2% of society, the ultra rich, that are going to be taxed. That's not true at all. You think about a lot of the boomers, they did buy homes cheap, affordably back in the day, but their wages weren't that high, but they bought and they invested, and after 40, 50 years, they own these properties outright. Some people invested, maybe had an extra house, maybe rented it out, maybe a cabin. And all of a sudden, now the government came along and said, look, you know what? No, we want 67% of your gain over 250. So, as these houses, and depends on the city you come from, if you're living up in, Red Deer, it's not so bad. But let's just say you're in one of the big centers, in the Vancouvers and the Torontos, and you had that situation, they're taking the vast majority of your equity out of your home. They want a tax bill for it. And the worst part is they're even talking about hitting you with a major tax bill on appreciation or the equity on your primary residence now. So that's the small end of the wedge. They're mentioning it. They're whispering it. Psst, 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 whispering it, hint, hint. It's not in. They're saying, no, we're not doing that. But as soon as they kick that small end of the wedge into the door, this is all becoming a conversation. You mark my words, in 5 years from now or so, you'll watch. That'll be a new law. These governments are not out for our best interests. And the bottom line is, you've got to find the best way within the structure of your particular country, your pension, your employment, to come out, in a position where you can make a go of it. The problem is, as time goes on, and here's the ticking time bomb piece, as time goes on, more and more taxation's hitting, more and more, of course, again, the capital gains taxation, clawing back on benefits, whether it's Social Security, pushing those years out, those dates out, and then justifying and utilizing the factor and with propaganda saying, look, you guys are good. Everybody's living longer. Life's good. Keep on keeping on. But remember, that's not the typical situation. And most people find themselves, somewhat not feeling that great, come the 60s. We already said 66.1 is where people are starting to get ill. People are starting to get sick at that age. So, what are you going to work to 65? That's why I say 65, scrap that. If you can afford it, if you wait. So here's the thing. Let's say you're 55 today. Here's a hypothetical. And I've been thinking about this. Like I said, this is really kind of going through my mind. I was just chilling the other day and just kind of going through my mind about this. But could you imagine, you're 55 today. In your mind, you're like, well, I want to build up the 401k. I want to build up my pension. I want to work, say, another 6 years at this corporate job that's grinding me out. But it's worth it because I'll put a little more in my pension. Whatever the factors are and the conditions are, a lot of people are feeling that, right? Like just trying to maximize. And that all makes sense. There's always that sweet spot where the diminishing returns piece, right? So it has to be the right time for you. And it's you and your financial people will know that. But what you've got to think about this. You're 55. You're trying to maximize this. You say, look, I'm going to retire in 10 years. Based on what we know today, extrapolate what's happening with taxation, capital gains. Think about all the changes in political policies, government policies, taxation, the world, everything that's going on right now. We're in such a volatile environment. I can't even imagine what 10 years looks like right now. I feel like it'll be such a drastic difference than it is today that it's so unpredictable. So thinking, well, I'm going to wait for 10 years. Yeah, that's a big hope and a dream and a prayer, I guess. Again, everybody, it's got to make sense. It has to make sense from a dollars and cents perspective. But we've seen so much. You even think of what's happened in the last 100 years. So between 2000, what am I thinking here? Well, let's just say the last century, roughly. The amount of different things we've seen, the world conflicts, the technology changes, politics, transportation, housing, cost of living, just the massive change that we've seen in the last 100 years. It's absolutely astronomical. And the way things are accelerating, can you imagine like 10 years, a tenth of that? You feel that things aren't going to change much? It's going to have a huge impact. So the way I see this is a ticking time bomb. And that's why I really believe, the sooner the better, because you figure out your finances, make it work, lock it in, and grab it and run. Because, like I said, the way things are trending, everything's getting scaled back, clawed back, except for taxes, which is going up. And that's a guaranteed. So it's almost like, I don't want to say, I mean, we all have to work, and the next generation, I have kids, they'll probably have kids. So at some level, like, we all just sort of keep adapting and growing and moving and become, try to find the way. But realistically, it's a new world. And this predictability about life expectancy being at 76 years of age in the US, and I can bank and hang all my future and finances and life on that. I don't think so. I don't think it's quite what we expected and what we know from many years ago. Things have changed. Life's changed. And like I said, I really do believe the sooner the later. Love to hear your thoughts around that, everybody. We're not here forever. And it's tragic to hear when people share stories that they can't do it because, maybe bad decisions, maybe a divorce, which is really, really unfortunate. I know lots of people like that. Or just a bad series of circumstances, maybe a garbage company that never paid pension. And now, after 25 years, they've really got no fallback. There's a million scenarios, but I'd love to hear your story. Please do drop a line. And again, as always, everybody, tomorrow I'll be sharing one of my typical days. So you definitely want to come back to see that. A typical day after I'm done doing this. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.